Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining today. My name is Mikey and I'll be your host and moderator for today's session. Firstly, I'd like to start with wishing all our attendees happy International Women's Day for yesterday and for the whole month as well. So before we start the session, I'm just going to do some icebreaker questions to make us feel a lot more comfortable with the session. So why don't you tell us in the chat why you're joining us today? Any particular takeaways you want to take away from this session? Personally, for me, I would like to find out about optimal sleeping durations, because sometimes I get 5 hours sleep and I still feel rested. Other times I get more than 8 and I feel super tired. And I just want to understand the science behind that as well. Agreed, sleeping patterns as well. It's important. Just a reminder, you can share how you're feeling as well using an emoji in the chat box. Yeah, I would like to feel fresh 100% of the time. I'll also be interested to learn about power napping, because I'm sure there's some professions where they don't get enough sleep, but if they can fit in naps in, I'm assuming like truckers, they somehow have the energy to be able to drive across the country. It doesn't work for me as well. I always end up just getting into deep sleep and snoring and maybe missing some meetings as well. Keep sharing in the chat. We'll probably wait just one more minute for more people to join, and we will start the session then. Yes, we all need quality sleep. I feel that. 8 hours, I think, is the recommended, but obviously everyone's different, right? Especially if you get older, I realize older people, they have less sleep, and more inconsistent sleep, but somehow still getting enough sleep. Okay, I think we have enough people now, so I'll begin the presentation. So today, I'm honored to be joined by Naluri mental health coach, Amanda Xavier, to present Mind Over Mattress, the impact of sleep on mental health and well-being. Just before we get started, I'm going to go through some housekeeping slides. So today, it will be an interactive session filled with chat-in opportunities, polls, and handouts. So I encourage you to participate as much as possible to make that the most of our hour together. Please do chat amongst yourselves as well. Last session, we had some very interesting discussions in the chat. So please do get involved. If you do want to ask a question direct to Amanda, please type @ and then you'll see a little Amanda box there when you type it in. If you want to keep it private, choose to send us private message so you will remain anonymous. There will also be handouts throughout the webinar. It will be available in that little handout tab on your right. And just a reminder that this presentation will be sent to you after the session, and it will be available as a PDF document to download at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today, Amanda. Amanda Xavier is a clinical psychologist specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. With a Bachelor of Psychology and a Master of Clinical Psychology from Help University in Malaysia, Amanda is a true expert in her field. She provides tailored therapy sessions and in-depth psychological assessments, helping clients overcome a range of issues, including depression, anxiety, stress, burnout, sleep, and much more. With Amanda's support, clients gain the tools and strategies they need to achieve their goals and live out their best lives. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Mikey. Hi, everyone. As introduced, my name is Amanda. I am a clinical psychologist and a mental health coach here at Naluri. So today, I would like to talk about sleep hygiene, what it is, why you should pay attention to it, and how do you start doing it. So I'm sure with like many of you, you've heard of sleep hygiene before. I saw some of your interactions in the chat earlier that some of you want to learn about sleeping patterns, sleeping habits, naps. I even saw a question there, why are good mattresses so expensive? Maybe I'll cover that in the Q&A later, right? But first, I think let's start off with something to refresh your memory on what sleep hygiene is, or what at least what you think sleep hygiene is. So Mikey, if you could pull up the Mentimeter here. Very quickly, we're just gonna all go into Mentimeter and type out your answers to the first question. What is sleep hygiene? So let's have that Mentimeter up and you can all start giving us your answers. There you go. So this is sort of a word cloud where the most common answers will become bigger, right? So everyone go into there and start typing, what do you think sleep hygiene is? All right, I've got some stuff here. Quality sleep being the biggest. I think that's still the most common answer there. All right, we've got sleep prep, restful, peace, no dream, clean bed, deep sleep, clear mind. And if you can see, more and more words are added, but quality sleep, good sleep, deep sleep are still the biggest here. I think that's the most common thing that maybe a lot of you are putting in, right? Yeah, and it's going more and more words coming in. We still have quality sleep, deep sleep as the biggest part here. And we also have sleep, which makes sense. It is sleep hygiene. All right, thank you everyone for putting all these answers in. It's getting a bit too small that I can't see the other words already, but I saw things like uninterrupted, peace, healthy, no dreams, no interruptions, which are definitely all part of sleep hygiene. I think you all kind of got the gist here for sure, right? So let's very quickly, let's move on to the next question. And this is more of a poll about your own sleep hygiene, right? On your own sleep routine. So Mikey, could we go to the next question? Yeah. On a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being very terrible sleep and not feeling rested, and 10 being great sleep and always feeling refreshed, where are you in your current sleeping routine? And current, you know, let's talk about maybe the past month or so. How is your sleep? All right, we see some of the answers sort of, it will definitely average out in the middle, but we see building up that a lot of people are probably at a 5 or a 6, right in the middle there. I think we've got some people all the way at the 8 or 9, and some people definitely at the 1 or 2 down there, right? And I see some people also putting it in the chat box, which is great. If you came in later, do join the Mentimeter so that your numbers could contribute to this average here. All right, so I think sort of the average will definitely be a 5. And for those who are getting a sleep that's about 8 or 9, you know, well done. I'm glad that you're feeling rested. I know that's very, very helpful for your daily life. And for those who are you that are getting it on the lower ends of like 2, 3s, 1s even, I really empathize. I'm so sorry you're struggling with your sleep recently. And I'm sure that's really, really difficult to handle. But most of us are at about the middle, right? We will have bad sleep sometimes, but we will also have good sleep sometimes. And on average, it kind of cancels out and we feel not the most refreshed, but not the most exhausted either, right? So now that we have this one, let's move on to the next question then. All right. So the last question here, what is the hardest part of sleep hygiene for you? Now you guys can answer as you did earlier. Just put all your answers here. What is the hardest part of, you know, falling asleep, maintaining your sleep routines or your cycles? What is hard for you here? So this is back in the Mentimeter. If you're not in the Mentimeter yet, you can open that up at the bottom here. It says take part in the Mentimeter. Okay, great. Oh, so we don't really have a common answer yet. It's all a jumble here, a lot of different answers coming in. Okay, but I see some of the bigger ones here: overthinking, falling asleep, clear mind. Yeah, makes sense. I think it's really hard to fall asleep when your mind is so jumbled with things. Yeah, and those are still the big ones. Going to bed on time. You've got time here and there. Okay. Yeah, like getting deep sleep, well rested. Right now it's getting a bit too small for me to see all the other answers here, but we still see clearing your thoughts, overthinking, and a clear mind. These are still the bigger ones here, right? And that makes a lot of sense because when we're trying to fall asleep, the last thing that sort of gets shut down is our brain, right? We've closed our eyes, everything's settled, we're comfortable in our bed, yet our thoughts are still going and going. And at the end of today's webinar, I'm actually going to teach you how to, one of the techniques that can teach you how to clear your thoughts, have a bit more peace in your mind before you fall asleep. And hopefully that would also help you to get to sleep faster, if anything. Right? Thank you everyone for putting your answers here. I think there's a lot of interest in knowing how to have a proper sleep hygiene. And that's probably something we are all struggling with, right? All right. So thanks, Mikey, for the Mentimeter. So let's get back into this. As with most of your answers earlier, right, sleep hygiene is an overall improvement in your habits surrounding sleep. So this quote here, it comes from the sleepfoundation.org, and it states, strong sleep hygiene means having both a bedroom environment and daily routines that promote consistent, uninterrupted sleep. So a lot of you got your answers there, right? You put in the right answers there. And keeping a stable sleep schedule, making a bedroom comfortable and free of disruptions, following a relaxing pre-bedtime routine, and building healthy habits during the daytime can all contribute to ideal sleep hygiene. And I want to specify here that we are looking at the most common cycle of circadian rhythm, which means being awake in the daytime and sleeping through the night, right? Please keep in mind that there will be differences when it comes to working a night shift, or what Mikey mentioned earlier, you know, those truckers that have to drive the whole night, having clinically diagnosed insomnia, for example, or even being a new parent with a baby that doesn't sleep throughout the night. So I will address this as much as possible during the Q&A later. So take note that what I'm going to talk about here, these are just the basic tenets of sleep hygiene in this presentation first, right? I really appreciate the understanding there. But all your questions, we will definitely be answering them later. So while it sounds like a huge undertaking to make sure that you hit all the points stated here, it is also possible to have good sleep hygiene by taking it one step at a time. This means that you can start by identifying the bigger issues that are blocking you from having better sleep hygiene and slowly building up your habits one by one. This slower, steadier progress is much more helpful, and it's also proven to last much longer than a sudden big change in your routine. So no matter how much info I share with you today, no matter how many of these new habits you want to cultivate, please keep in mind that you can choose just one thing to start working on, focus on that for as long as you need to, make it a habit in your life, and then work your way up from there. And even that one thing will even have a significant difference, right? Okay, so I also understand that it's completely normal. If we're talking about habits, right, it's completely normal to feel demotivated to change your habits. We're all busy people. We all have schedules that just don't match up to wanting personal changes in our lives, right? All of us feel this. It's a common struggle that we as human beings share. But there are a lot of ways to make sure that you stick to your efforts despite that demotivation. One such way is understanding, why is sleep hygiene important? When you have the knowledge of something, it helps you to remind yourself, I'm doing this for a reason, right? And those reasons could be right here. So firstly, I have these 3 topics, but our overall health is improved when we're able to get regular, restful sleep. This includes our physical health, as sleep has been proven to assist in our immune system, our cell repair, hormone balance, energy levels, and cardiovascular health. So I won't go into details about why these are important. I'm sure a lot of you know why these are important. But when you talk about it on the flip side, a lack of good sleep increases our risk for developing obesity, diabetes, heart diseases, and infections. So if you've ever noticed that sometimes when you're lacking sleep, you get sick more easily, right? you suddenly develop, fever or cough or flu, or you get, stomach aches, you get headaches, you get all of these kind of things. And there's a higher risk of developing these things. When you have good sleep, that also affects and improves our brain and cognitive health, such as our focus, our problem solving and reasoning skills, and our reflexes. So imagine if you're sleep deprived and you're driving to work every day, that's going to cause some issues because your reflexes while you're driving is the most important thing to help you not get into a car crash, right? I know a lot of us might go into autopilot sometimes, and that's helpful when we don't have the energy. But at the same time, what happens when it's just a situation you didn't expect? That's why sleep is so important, and it does help you with your reflexes, right? And secondly, our mental health is definitely also affected by sleep, including our daily mood. So if you've ever noticed yourself being more cranky, stressed, or irritated than usual, this is probably because you're sleep deprived, right? It is harder to regulate our emotions when we are sleep deprived. We're not able to make sort of logical and rational decisions based on our situations because our emotions are just at the forefront of our brain when we don't have enough sleep. We don't have that same sort of barrier to take a step back, figure out our emotions, and then react appropriately because we don't have enough sleep. We need the sleep to make sure that it is a buffer. We have energy to buffer between us and reacting on our emotions. Okay? And then we also can say that having better sleep also helps you at work or your studies. You can be a lot more productive and motivated, which improves your performance and efficiency with work. So this is related to the physical health and the mental health, right? We also take fewer breaks in between our work as we have more energy to keep going. And a lot of us feel this. Sometimes our breaks don't mean we leave the office or we leave our desk, but we take mental breaks by procrastinating on work, distracting ourselves with checking our phone or social media, or just mentally checking out. Anyone relate to this? You can put it in the chat. If you just have this brain fog or you just sort of mentally check out and think about something else, you start daydreaming and you're not actually focusing on the work that you have to do, right? So this usually, I see some people already saying that 100%, right? So this happens a lot when you don't have quality sleep because your brain is trying to rest during the day when you can't, right? And that happens to us where we need to really just check out because we just don't have the energy to focus on work. Now that you can see just how much sleep can affect us, I hope that this helps you remind yourself about why you should be keeping up with these changes, these new habits that you want to work on for your sleep, right? Make sure that that motivation is there, make sure the reasons are there, and that will definitely help you change your habits so that we can all tap into that wealth of sleep so that we just improve our lives significantly, right? So let's see. Let's start with how are we actually going to change our sleep hygiene and improve it. One of the easiest ways to start this is make your sleeping environment as comfortable and conducive to sleep as possible. There are a number of ways. So let's start with light and sound. Minimizing the amount of light in your bedroom is essential to allowing your mind and body to relax, and you can do this by having heavy curtains or blackout blinds over your windows to block out outside light. You can also turn off the lights in your room as much as possible or use a sleep mask if that's comfortable for you. Personally, for me, I do need a little bit of light in my room. Just to be very honest, I don't like having it completely dark. But I do notice that as long as the light is not too bright, it's like at the corner of the room, just very muted light, it's okay for me. I can help. But sometimes I do have to sort of turn away from the brighter light source. So you can definitely have a little bit of light and still fall asleep if you're used to that. You can also you can use a sleep mask, like I mentioned. If you still want lights on, but you don't turn off the lights, but you still want that fully blackout state, you can use a sleep mask. And for sound, it might be tougher to block out external sounds, but if you can find comfortable earplugs, that could also help because sometimes you just have like dogs barking outside, cats meowing. Maybe your neighbor has like late night gaming happening, and there's just a lot of sounds coming from the environments, right? So you could put in some earplugs, or you could also use a white noise machine to drown out other sounds. So a white noise machine is just something that you can get, but something else that provides natural white noise is your fan, your air conditioning unit, that constant regular sound. It doesn't make the room sound too empty. Um, and this sort of decreases the other distracting noises that you hear outside, as long as it's not so empty. But if it is a bit too silent, it gets a bit uncomfortable noise wise. So if you want to have some white noise, that will also help. So why this works is because when you minimize light, you minimize sound. These are signals for your body and your brain to tap into that circadian rhythm of, oh, it's nighttime. It's time for me to go to sleep. So then you can allow your body to fall asleep. You can also adjust the temperature in your room to make it comfortable for sleep. It's tough to fall asleep when it's too warm or it's too cold, but each of us have different sensitivities to temperature, and it's best to experiment with it yourself to see what's best for you. Here we have sort of the ideal suitable temperature, but you can experiment where on that range is best for you. But if you're not able to adjust the temperature of the room, you can also see if your clothing or your bedding might help, because some fabrics and materials are more airy and breathable or warmer and thicker than others. So let's say you don't have an AC unit, maybe what you can do is experiment with the type of materials you have for your blanket or your pillowcases or your bed sheets, and as well as what you wear to bed at night. Or you can even just have a stand fan, which is faster right at you. Speaking of bedding, it will also be helpful to make sure that the material, like I mentioned, are comfortable. So it wouldn't help you sleep if you find the material itchy or uncomfortable, right? So if you have that material, it will definitely lull you to sleep much faster. And this is a question someone asked earlier about comfortable mattresses. Why are they so expensive? I don't know why they're expensive, but it might have to do with the fact that there's a lot of research being put into certain materials, certain textures, or ergonomics of the mattress, and that's why it's a bit more expensive. But as long as you can find a mattress that is comfortable to you, that would help a lot, especially if you've been noticing back pains in the morning from an uncomfortable, a bit lumpy mattress, and it's harder to fall asleep anyway because you're just not in a comfortable state. And there are also scents that have been shown to be calming and relaxing enough to induce sleep, such as lavender and chamomile. There are a number of other scents as well, so not just these two. So you can also experiment with the ones that you prefer. You can either have a diffuser in your room, maybe a candle, although I don't recommend leaving a candle burning throughout the night. You can light it first and then turn it off before you fall asleep. Or essential oils or mists that you can spray on your bedding, your pillowcase, your bed sheets. Something that's super important to supplement these efforts is to also have a clean and tidy room. A neat environment relaxes you a lot more than you think. So put in the time to regularly clean and tidy your bedroom as well. Now, these changes are not big, but they do set you up for better sleep if you can start changing some of these aspects of your sleeping environment. It helps because these are things that you can change externally, and it's easier to do so because it's just a small change. You can clean up your room today. You can find a candle that you want to light and have the scent in your room. You can start turning off lights, right? Those are just the easier side of things. And then you can work your way to acknowledging and changing the habits you have that might be impacting your sleep. So before I go into the next part, I see that we have some questions already. I think if there's any I can answer right away, I will look at it here. Otherwise, some of the rest are going to be at the end. All right. Give me 1 second, trying to look at that. Okay. Let's see. I don't have the answers for the affordable and good quality sleep bedding products. All I know that is that if you can find one that is comfortable, it doesn't have to be expensive, right? You can definitely find one that once you lie on it, it is comfortable. Okay. In terms of the good pillow, I would say It depends on everybody. Some people find like having two pillows are comfortable. Some people feel like having a flatter pillow is comfortable. It really depends on you. So figure it out by trying out different things. Okay. So the rest of it I will answer later in the Q&A. These are ones that I thought would be easier for me to answer about the environment. Now let's talk about your habits. So some of the habits, like I mentioned, are listed here. But as always, please just pick one and focus on improving that one. Over time, you can work on more and more, but we can get overwhelmed and demotivated if we try to change everything at once. So these habits are divided into your health habits, your nighttime routines, and what you do when you're in bed. So let's go first with health habits. These include your diet and exercise. With your diet, it is recommended that you don't have your dinner too late or too close to your sleeping time, especially if it's a big, heavy meal. This would deter your body from falling asleep because it's still in the process of digesting your food, making it an awake time, right? So you can have light snacks or beverages before bed as long as it won't make you feel more active, such as caffeine or sugary food, right? So definitely you can have dinner, but maybe something to think about is, are you having your dinner too late? If maybe you get off from work too late and you can only have your dinner at a certain time, what's in the way then? Then you can think about what's in the way that I can either cut back on time or take a break to have dinner first and then get back to work, right? That's something to think about. Additionally, if you reduce or cut out alcohol and smoking, that would definitely also increase your overall sleep quality, as these substances definitely affect our sleep hormones. So if you're currently consuming these two substances, it would be a good idea to work on reducing them to focus on your sleep hygiene. I know in the case of alcohol, a lot of people assume that when you drink, you start to feel sleepy, right? But once the effects of alcohol wears off, you actually are left feeling way more awake because of the chemical reactions in your body. And that's what happens when you sort of knock out after drinking a bit, and then you just suddenly pop back up awake in the middle of the night. So it's best to cut it out generally, especially too much alcohol, just reduce it. And smoking as well. Reducing smoking would definitely help balance out the hormone levels to induce your sleep. For exercise, it would be helpful to have a regular exercise routine where you're able to increase your daily movement. This regulates your energy enough that your body would require rest and allow for more uninterrupted sleep at night. Again, this could be something you experiment with, especially regarding what kind of exercise you would like to incorporate into your routine, which, ideally should be something you enjoy, as it helps with having a high motivation to keep it in your routine. For example, for myself, I found that the only exercise I enjoy is roller skating. So I try my best to have it as regular as possible. Otherwise, I don't exercise at all, right? So try to find something that you do enjoy, and that would get you more motivated to keep up with it. Now, next, let's go into our nighttime routine. Having a regular routine before bedtime can sort of trick your body into feeling tired and ready for sleep. Because if you start to pair certain habits with the act of falling asleep, your mind starts to send signals to your body to lower your heart rate and release sleep hormones. So let's get into the habits that you might like to maintain as a regular nighttime routine. And before we go any further, right, midday naps can have an effect on your ability to sleep, mostly because our brains believe that we have just woken up and it's not time to sleep yet. So if you can, limit your naps to shorter durations, such as power naps between 15 minutes to 1 hour before diving into deep sleep, because when you reach the 1.5 hour mark, that usually is a signal for your brain to be like, okay, it's time for deep sleep now. We're going to shut it down and go into deep sleep. And that gets you feeling really lethargic after a nap, right? And try not to have it past the early afternoon, such as 2 p.m. Because if you have a longer time of being awake before you fall asleep at night again, it definitely helps. But you can take midday naps. It's not bad. It's just try to limit it. Limit the duration and the frequency. So other habits you might want to cultivate for a nighttime routine is to set a regular sleep and wake up time. This means that if you would like to have at least 7 hours of sleep a night, you can sleep at 11 p.m. and wake up at 6 a.m. Setting an alarm in your phone can help with this, as we make sure to go to bed at the same time each day and wake up at the same time each day too. So this regulates our sleeping schedule so that we start to feel sleepy around the same time each night. And our body is able to feel more awake around the same time each morning too. You will be able to notice the impact of this once you begin to wake up easily with your alarm, or you might start to feel awake a few minutes before your alarm too. This goes for those who struggle with waking up on time. But for those who do have insomnia, like I mentioned earlier, you wake up way before your morning alarm, then that's the issue that we might be able to discuss in the Q&A later. Once you've decided to set a certain time for bed, you can now start to have a wind down routine. So this can include like a skincare routine or reading or any meditation routines you have, journaling, or even catching up with a podcast. It can be as long or short as you need it to be. Once you decide how long you need, set that as your wind down time. For example, you've noticed that you take around 30 minutes to complete your routine before you get into bed. Going with the previous example of sleeping at 11 p.m., you can start your wind down routine at 10:30 p.m. and be in bed by 11. You can also try to notice how long it usually takes you to fall asleep. For some people, about 15 minutes, right? The lucky ones. And for others, maybe more than 1 hour, and so on. So try to include this amount of time into your wind down time and set up your routine appropriately to make sure that you have enough time to fall asleep and still get a full 7 hours. So what that might look like, if you take about an hour to fall asleep, you might want to start getting into bed at 9:30, right? You do your routine by 9:30, you're in bed, and you allow yourself to try to fall asleep as long as you can get to sleep before 11 o'clock. All right. So once you're in bed and you're prepping to fall asleep, you can still improve a few habits. One important one is to unplug from electronics. All of us use our phones on a daily basis, and we tend to also have it with us at bedtime. I'm guilty of that also. I hold it up and read and whatever, right? But the light and the stimulation from our phones can impact the signals our brain is giving our body for sleep. The bright light and the exciting interaction would trick our brains into feeling more awake, making it harder to fall asleep faster. So do your best to put away your phone. If you are like me and you do enjoy some entertainment from your phone, I suggest listening to an audiobook or a podcast instead, so that your eyes don't need to focus on a bright screen. This isn't sponsored by Spotify, okay? But you can set a sleep timer on it if you're listening to podcasts or audiobooks on the app. So I do this every night. I'll turn on a specific podcast and I'll set a sleep timer for 10 minutes so that I will be able to listen to it, but allow myself to fall asleep at the same time. That way it turns off as I fall asleep. And this allows you to have some entertainment, but also lets you rest your eyes and takes the job of turning the audio off all on its own. I'm sure some of you have figured that out already, but if you haven't, that's something that you can try out if you enjoy podcasts like me. And if you notice, I know this is in the poll we had earlier in the Mentimeter, overthinking was like one of the biggest words that came up because so many people said overthinking was the hardest part of falling asleep. So if you notice that you have the tendency to overthink before sleeping, it would be a good idea to get out of bed completely rather than tossing and turning or diving deeper into your thoughts. Overthinking is usually a sign of anxiety, and it usually comes when we're worried about something. Most of the time, we think about future events, risks, potential consequences, and other worries, like something's going to happen tomorrow, a meeting we have, we're worrying about that, right? When this happens, it's actually a good idea to write down the worries so that you're able to transfer them out of your mind and onto the page. You can also get out of bed to do something else, such as reading or meditation, and come back to bed when you're feeling sleepy again. Allow this to be somewhat flexible so that you don't criticize yourself for this struggle with overthinking. And last but not least, using relaxation techniques can definitely help you fall asleep faster and have a more restful sleep. These techniques are also used in improving overall mental and emotional health because it reduces anxiety, stress, overthinking, and it increases calmness. Two of those techniques that I want to share with you today are called progressive muscle relaxation and mindful deep breathing. So, the progressive muscle relaxation, if you've heard of this before, it's actually something very closely associated with anxiety and sleeping. This is a technique that was created in the 1920s based on the theory that physical relaxation can promote mental relaxation. This is a sequential process of tensing a muscle and then relaxing it, and this will release tension from your muscles while also helping you to recognize what that tension feels like. It's also essential to tense each muscle group before relaxing. This action emphasizes the sense of relaxation in the area. This exercise can help reduce anxiety and tension, improve sleep, ease and reduce neck pain, lower back pain, improve blood pressure, and decrease the occurrence of migraines. So PMR is actually an easy technique to do in bed before you sleep. You don't need any special equipment, you don't need any special gear. All you need is a bit of focus, a bit of attention, and try your best to reduce distractions, such as muting or turning off your phone, right? The key to this technique is to tense each muscle group and hold it for 5 seconds. Then you exhale as you let your muscles relax fully for 10 to 20 seconds before you move on to the next muscle group. You can do it from the head down or from the feet up. So Mikey, if you'd help me here, we have a handout that guides you through each step that you can try before bed. And this technique is something that's really, really helpful if you want to try it out, especially if you notice you're not going to be able to sleep anyway. Why not try it out, right? That's a way I like to trick my mind as well. And it eventually ends up working. So one way that you can try it out is right now with us here, if you don't mind, just take your hand like this, right? And just hold it into a fist and tense it as much as possible for 5 seconds. And as you release it, also exhale. You'll feel that tension leaving your hand, but also in a way leaving your body as you exhale the tension out. So imagine that throughout your entire body. That's definitely going to help you feel more peaceful and more relaxed as you try to fall asleep. And now the next one, mindful breathing. This might be familiar to some of you, and it's a very helpful technique to induce relaxation, especially to help you sleep better. Although breathing is automatic for all of us, mindful breathing is the conscious act of taking slower breaths. This method of inhaling air into the lungs may promote relaxation and calm anxiety and stress by modifying your body's response to stress. So anxiety and stress comes from our sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for kicking our bodies into gear when we face a threat, initiating what is known as the fight or flight response. Research suggests that deep breathing can help trigger the parasympathetic response, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the complementary system to bring the body to a calm state and instill feelings of relaxation. Trying to tell us basically that, hey, there's no threat, we can relax, we can fall asleep, I don't need the fight or flight response, right? So there are a number of ways to do this, but the easiest way to start, especially if you're using this as a technique to relax before bed, is to just set a time for yourself. It can be as long as you like, or just 5 minutes. You can get into a comfortable position. You can either lie down in bed and do it, or you can sit up and do it as well. Then you turn your focus to your breaths, paying attention to how it feels as you breathe in and out slowly. So actually, I've prepared this as something that we can try together in this webinar right now. Let's try a short one so that you can all experience how it feels. So wherever you are, try to get into your most comfortable seated position, either with both feet on the floor or folded if you prefer. Lean back in your chair, allow your eyes to close or keep them open with a softened gaze. Right? You can look down at your desk or wherever you are, maybe at your lap if you're able to see that, or you can just close your eyes, right? And allow yourself to experience this practice together. Okay, so let's begin by taking several long, slow, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling fully. Breathe in through your nose and out through your nose or your mouth. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm. bring your full attention to noticing each breath as it enters through your nostrils, travels down to your lungs, and causes your belly to expand. And notice each out breath as your belly contracts and air moves up through the lungs, back up through your nose or your mouth. Invite your full attention to flow with your breath. Notice how the inhale is different from the exhale. You may experience the air as cool as it enters your nose and warm as you exhale. As you turn more deeply inward, begin to let go of noises around you. If you are distracted by sounds in the room, simply notice them and bring your attention back to your breath and my voice. Simply breathe as you do. Don't strive to change anything about your breath. Don't try to control it in any way. Observe and accept your experience in this moment without judgment, paying attention to each inhale and exhale. If your mind wanders to thoughts, plans, or problems, simply notice that your mind is wandering. Watch the thought as it enters your awareness as neutrally as possible. Then practice letting go of the thought as if it were a leaf floating down a stream. In your mind, place each thought that arises on a leaf and watch as it floats out of sight down the stream. Then slowly bring your attention back to your breath. Your breath is an anchor that you can return to over and over again when you become distracted by thoughts. So notice when your mind has wandered, you can observe the types of thoughts that hook or distract you, because noticing is the richest part of learning. And with this knowledge, you can strengthen your ability to detach from thoughts and mindfully focus your awareness back on the qualities of your breath. Practice coming back to the breath with your full attention. You can notice the gentle rise of your stomach on the inhale and the relaxing letting go on the exhale. Allow yourself to be completely with your breath as it flows in or out. You might also become distracted by pain or discomfort in the body, or twitching or itching sensations that draw your attention away from the breath. You may also notice feelings arising, maybe sadness or happiness, frustration or contentment or peace. Acknowledge whatever comes up, including thoughts or stories about your experience. Simply notice where your mind went without judging it, slowly and gently pushing it away. You don't have to cling on to it. You don't have to wish it was different. Just simply refocus your mind and guide your attention back to your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Follow the air all the way in and all the way out. Mindfully be present moment by moment with your breath. And again, if your mind wanders, just notice without judging it. Gently guide your awareness back to your breathing. Now continue to do that for a bit, paying attention to your breath without my voice. And now, as this practice comes to an end, Slowly allow your attention to expand and notice your entire body and then beyond your body to the room you're in. When you're ready, you can open your eyes or just come back fully alert and awake. So remember, as you start practicing this yourself, the breath is always with you as a refocusing tool to bring you back to the present moment. Now, I'll give you a moment to get back here because I've experienced myself that once you go through a mindful breathing practice, it can take a while to refocus on what you're doing right now. We also have this in another handout that you can follow. And Mikey, do kindly put it in there. This is the handout for the mindful breathing exercise that you can follow on your own time. Right. So before we move forward with that, how does everyone feel with the mindful breathing practice that we just went through? A relief, almost fall asleep. Yeah. All right, that's great. Thank you for trying it, everyone. I really appreciate that. It's good that there's a relief, there's almost falling asleep, because this is one of those practices that you can try yourself before bed, and it really does answer the question that we had earlier about overthinking. Right, when you notice your thoughts are just coming in, just like a train rushing in, it's okay to say, or notice that there's a train there, there's all these thoughts, but I want to focus on my breath. I want to pull my attention to my breath and allow that to take over my mind rather than these thoughts that I'm having. All right. So, as a recap today, we learned about sleep hygiene, the benefits of improving your own sleep hygiene, including better sleep, of course, as well as other aspects of your physical health, mental health, and overall performance. And you've also learned about how to start practicing sleep hygiene, starting with changes in your environment, changes in your health habits, nighttime routines, as well as what you do in bed, including practicing relaxation to assist with your sleeping. I hope you have thought of at least one thing you can start working on today to improve your sleeping habits. And like I said earlier, focus on that just one thing. Work on that, and then everything else will come slowly for you. Okay? But thank you so much for tuning in, and I believe I will hand it back over to Mikey so we can open up the floor for a Q&A about sleep hygiene or any topics regarding sleep.
Hello everyone, I'm back.
Yes.
Just before we get into the Q&A, I'll be sharing a summary as well. You guys can take home as a handout. And just a reminder on how to ask Amanda questions or direct them to myself. So thank you so much, Amanda, for that excellent presentation, and to everyone for engaging. We got a lot of questions coming through. I know Amanda might have addressed some of the questions during the session, but there were also some that came in during the registration process that we'd like to address first before we get to the live questions. If you don't get to your questions, don't worry. Please feel free to reach out to your coach on the Naluri app, or direct the question to a coach via email, or even Amanda herself. Just stop sharing the screen. First registration question, Amanda. As a breastfeeding mum who wakes up twice or thrice every night to feed her baby, what's the best advice you can give to ensure a mother has an overall high quality sleep? Is it even
This
possible?
question it's something that I've talked to my friends who are mothers, and while it is near impossible to get proper sleep there for about maybe the first 2 years of your baby's life, there are certain things you can do to hopefully get as much sleep as possible, right? So it is very difficult to set a sleep routine when you are waking up to feed your baby 2 or 3 times a night, or even when your baby wakes up and is crying and just need a change of diaper and so on. One thing that might help is to really figure out a routine or sort of a shift with your partner, with your husband, allowing yourself to get a bit more rest while he is handling maybe feeding the baby pre-breast pumped milk during the night, right? So you don't have to always be awake and feed your baby. So something that is great there is figuring out the best time of shift where you get the maximum amount of hours possible, maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and then wake up for your shift of taking care of the baby and then going back for a nap and something like that. I've been told by my friends who are moms that that is the best way to figure things out. But there are also many different ways to figure out how to help your baby have a more consistent sleep routine as well after a while, as that's something a lot of people struggle with. So if you could do more research about that part, I don't think I have the expertise to share on that, but if you could do more research about your baby sleep patterns, that would definitely help you a lot to shorten that period of time that you don't get enough sleep at all.
Yes, it's a good reminder that having a baby is a shared responsibility and it's
Definitely.
not all on the mum. Okay, next registration question as well. How can I recover from sleep deprivation when working extended hours or even overnight
Right.
when work support
So
is
this
needed?
one, I think I briefly mentioned earlier that the sleep hygiene is meant to be created for the regular circadian rhythm, right? Being awake in the day, falling asleep at night. But some of us have work shifts that are later in the day, evening or night shifts, or we really have an extended working hours. And so what happens is you might notice that your circadian rhythm sort of gets into a very wacky state of you feel sleepy at the wrong times. It just doesn't feel stable, right? How this happens is you can try to shift that sleep hygiene into doing all the same things, but in the morning instead. So at nighttime, when you're meant to be awake, try to make sure that when you go home, when you have the ability to sleep during the morning time, you follow the exact same sleep hygiene habits that we've talked about here. Black out the curtains is going to be daytime, right? Black out the curtains, make sure you're able to get as much sleep in the daytime as possible, and then wake up later in the day and start your day, right? So that usually helps, but definitely, I would also say this for just the general public, human beings are not made to work at night. And that's just the natural thing. That's why the circadian rhythm exists. So it is very difficult, but as long as you have shifts that don't last forever, I think there's a certain amount of time you can go with night shift or an unstable working shift before your body starts to feel the effects. So that might be something to figure out, especially if you struggle a lot more with sleep deprivation. Also, another thing to take note of, we all feel it differently. Some people might be, I think Mikey, you mentioned this earlier, some days you might be fine with just 5 hours of sleep or 4 hours of sleep. And then some days you're exhausted, even though you had 7 or 8 hours of sleep. And people are like this too. Some of us might survive just fine on 4 hours of sleep every day. I know actually a lot of the older generation, like my father, for example, he sleeps only 4 hours a day and he's completely fine the rest of the day, right? But some people require that 7, 8 hours every day. So it might be difficult for you if your body is not used to that sort of lesser amount of sleep. And that might be something to think about, to reflect about. Is this going to affect you in the long run? And what can you do about it to, I guess, make different choices regarding the working hours that you have? Yeah, I hope that answers that question there.
Yeah, I think related to that, there were some questions that's similar. How can sometimes we feel more tired when we get more than enough sleep? So like 8, 9 hours. Like during the weekend, I treat myself to having a lie-in, but I tend to feel even groggier, even though I'm having more sleep than
Yeah.
my normal
Okay, let me
sleeping
ask you
time.
this question. Do you notice that, let's say you sleep for 7 hours, or like
Yeah.
between that, there's a moment you do wake
Hmm.
up and then you try to fall back asleep?
It's usually when I have to go
Yes,
up
right?
and pee
And usually
in the
what
morning.
happens,
Yes.
exactly.
Then
So
I
what
go back
happens
to
is you're
sleep.
actually having two sleep cycles. So the first one is you have your deep sleep, you have your
Right.
REM, and then go into deep sleep. and you wake up to go pee because your brain is more awake and your body recognizes, I got to relieve myself, otherwise I might wet the bed, and it wakes you up, and then you go. But when you come back to bed, it's starting another sleep cycle. But you don't get to sleep another 8 hours, right? Because eventually you need to get up from the bed, right? So what happens is you
Okay.
sort of cut off that next
Yeah.
sleep cycle and you get another maybe 3 hours of sleep. And your brain recognizes as, I didn't get a full sleep cycle. I didn't get enough sleep. So that's why we're still tired
Oh,
after a
right.
cumulative amount of like 8 hours of sleep, because there was a cut in the middle there that we woke up, right? Very similarly, we get too
So
much
yeah.
sleep. How do I say this? So 7 or 8 hours is the optimum, but during that time, we might have
Mhm.
about, let's say, maybe 3 to 4 sleep cycles, REM cycles. And that means going from stage 1 of sleep to stage 4, deep sleep, coming back up to stage 1, and then the rapid eye movement sleep. And that's where we usually dream. So that's one cycle, which usually lasts for 1.5 hours, right? And then that adds up to how much, and then we wake up, right? At the last stage, our lighter sleep, we usually wake up naturally, our body. But we can't do this when we wake up after 2 cycles and then we go back to sleep. It's not a full amount of sleep. That's why we still feel tired, because our body's like, oh, here we go, another 8 hours of sleep, but we actually just get 3 or 4 and we wake up. But we thought we had enough sleep. So that's usually why we feel very lethargic. Yeah. Hope that answers.
Right.
Maybe go
Okay, I gotta
to
avoid doing
the
that
toilet
then.
earlier or figure out how
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I sleep. Yeah. Also related to this, quite a few
Mhm.
questions asked by audience is, do you have any advice for um, people with conditions that prevent them from sleeping well, like sleep apnea or
So I
narcolepsy?
think these kind of things are sort of medical and clinical issues that it's very difficult to set the same sleep hygiene to. Sleep apnea is actually a condition that's very dangerous because you stop breathing during sleep and then your brain wakes you up to remind you that, hey, if you don't breathe, you're going to die in your sleep, right? But I know that sleep apnea, you can do a few things to help reduce these things from happening, such as working on losing weight. That definitely is a factor, and stop smoking. That is definitely there as well. I know there are surgeries meant to help you with that because there's something about the upper, what's the word, upper palate, the roof of your mouth near your throat there that stops that process for you breathing. And that's where the surgery comes into play. That might be something that helps you in the long run. So that's probably something you might need to do a bit more research on, ask your doctors about as well, because that definitely can affect your long-term sleeping habits. For narcolepsy, I think that is very difficult because it is a medical condition. It is your brain shutting off and falling asleep. Ouch, that's my finger. Your brain shutting off and falling asleep at odd times of the day, but it doesn't count as getting sleep because you get micro sleep. You shut off and you sleep for like less than an hour and then you wake up, right? So you're still sleep deprived and your brain, it's the cycle. It just keeps happening. So narcolepsy is something more that you might need to get medical attention for, rather than following these sort of changes in your environment. Yeah, similar to insomnia, like I mentioned earlier. Sometimes insomnia is because of your environmental
Mhm.
habits, your environment, your habits, your routines. But more often than not, insomnia is caused by a chemical imbalance in your brain. And that's also something you can get medical attention for if it's been happening for way too long.
Right. And then related to that, there was another question as well about sleep
Mm.
supplements or nootropics specifically. What's the science
Well,
behind
the
that?
one that I've heard of, and a lot of people do sort of swear by it, but some people say it doesn't work, right? It's melatonin. And that melatonin is the sleep hormone. It is what is needed in our body to help us fall asleep. That's why some people take melatonin supplements. But it is not the only way to fall asleep. Like I said, some people still take it and can't fall asleep because of all these other environmental factors or anxiety, for example. In regards to other sort of products, I have not had enough research done on it at the moment, because if you even Google it, there's a lot of conflicting evidence here, right? Like some people say it works, some people say it doesn't work, and then some people will market these products, So the best thing to do, I do recommend, is to have a medical checkup, just in case this might be a medical reason. There might be a medical reason behind this. But if it's not a medical reason, then try the sleep hygiene habits, right? Because chances are you might have some environmental factors, such as, we talked about anxiety and overthinking. You could have things in your life right now that are leading to that, which is why you can't fall asleep. Maybe you are stuck in a very hectic work environment, and it's really difficult because you're required to be, your brain is required to be turned on all the time to problem solve. Maybe you are in a very busy home environment. You're taking care of your newborn baby and so on, and maybe you have like your kids, coming into the room and stuff. It's going to be very difficult. So sometimes it is the environmental factors rather than an internal factor. So I do recommend, if you feel like this has been happening for a very long time, maybe you can get a medical checkup first, rule out any possibilities there before you go into using supplements or other products that are said to induce sleep.
Yes, and obviously, like you mentioned just now, the supplements may work differently on different people. So we wouldn't generally recommend that for everyone, but if you are to take it, please do enough research about it and ask your doctors and practitioners about it before you start taking these medications. So now we're at 12. I understand, 12 p.m. in Malaysia. I understand some people might have to hop off and go to lunch. So before we continue with the Q&A, I'll be sharing this presentation slide as a PDF. It'll be available in the handouts tab. And please do give us your feedback of how you thought about the webinar. It'll be available as a pop-up right now. There you go, on your left. Thank you for those that joined. But let's continue on with the Q&A. We'll be answering the live questions now. Let's go back earlier. Okay, this one also related. How do you get rid of sleep paralysis? And what's the science behind that? And for those that don't know, sleep paralysis, I think I suffer from it, is when you're trying to sleep, your body shuts down, but your brain is still awake. So you're literally just lying there flat, and it can be quite a scary experience. Right. I don't know the science behind it, and I don't know.
I have personally experienced it as well. And I think this is a very interesting thing, right? Because I don't know if you notice this, sleep paralysis usually happens when we're really, really tired, right? It's not something that happens all the time. If you notice it's happening all the time, you're probably tired all the time. Okay, so that's usually the case behind it. And what happens is, remember when I talked about the sleep cycle, right? And our body basically is falling into sleep, that stage 1 REM cycle of sleep. Our body is ready to fall asleep, which is why it's locked. It's locked, and it's the same mechanism behind why when we dream, we don't move. Because if we dream about something, we start getting up and walking, that sleepwalking. We might think about, jumping up and down on our bed. We start punching the person sleeping next to us, our partner, just punching them and stuff. Like, it's a reason why we don't move when we're sleeping. So it locks your body down, but your brain is awake enough in that REM cycle that you feel you are awake. You are very lucid at that moment, right? And this, like I said, usually happens when you're tired, because that connection, that disconnect happens, which is quite common, I would say, these days. I think at this moment, there's no way to fully cut out this experience altogether, except to figure out how do you work on your exhaustion and not feel so tired all the time. But another thing to remember is, I think the people who have experienced sleep paralysis, your eyes are not actually open. Your eyes are still fast, closed, because your body is locked down when you sleep. But in your brain, in your mind, in your dream, your eyes are open, and we see sort of the environment that we're most used to, which is our bedroom. And that's the scarier part of it, where we would see, I think the most common sleep paralysis sort of induced nightmares are the ones with, like, we see a figure, where something is pressing down on us, or when we feel like we're being lifted, right? And that's because it is sort of that scary part of the brain working up and saying, like, what is the reason that this is happening to me? And for most of us, there's sort of a parapsychological reason that this is happening. So our brain sort of makes sense of it and creates a nightmare from it, right? And that's why sleep paralysis happens. Again, I don't really know what you can do to stop this, except for figuring out how to get, I think someone mentioned sleep debt, actually, how to reduce that sleep deprivation enough that you're not so tired, or how to manage your energy levels daily so that you don't go to bed feeling too tired and this keeps happening. Yeah.
Personally, for me, I wouldn't recommend this, but like I tend to have sleep paralysis if I was to sleep on my back.
That is actually
I'm not
true.
sure
Yeah.
about the science
Most people
behind
have
that.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So to avoid it, I try sleep on my side. But then if I do have sleep paralysis, I read this somewhere online. Again, I wouldn't recommend it, but they said to try wiggle your toes, because apparently your toes are the easiest muscles to move around in your body, and that will activate your body and your brain together, so you wake up from that. It's just a suggestion. I don't know
Yeah,
if it
definitely try
works,
that. I have
but
something
you
to
can
add
try
on
that.
to that as well. If you notice you're awake, you can tell yourself, oh, I'm going through sleep paralysis. This is not real. Let me just fall asleep again and get back up, right? So that usually happens for me, where I just repeat that and repeat that despite
Yeah.
how scared I am with whatever's happening. Yeah, but wiggling your toes, definitely. I try to move the smallest muscle and also repeat that to myself. So that could be help you. I think sleeping on your
Yeah.
back, I noticed that as well. Like, a lot of people say sleeping on your back, that happens because maybe this is again psychological. We feel more exposed and vulnerable when we're sleeping on our back, with sort of exposed like that. But there's something else about the position that triggers that in our brain. So sleeping on your side could help.
Sorry, just backtracking to the previous question asked. Do you know where or how to find any support groups for people that suffer narcolepsy in Malaysia in
Yeah, I
particular?
think we are not there. I know that there are some experts in sleep in Malaysia, but we don't have sort of we've not formed support groups, or forums, I think, at the moment. But usually there are these kind of groups on Facebook. So if you are able to find one, I think maybe there is one there. Let me just do a quick, because I know some
Yeah.
people have this sort of the Sleep Foundation in US is the one that covers a lot of these issues. If you can't find one in Malaysia, there's a chance that you could just join the forums overseas as well and get some support from there. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, hopefully that can help you.
Yeah. Related again to just the previous questions, not about narcolepsy, more about sleep paralysis and dreams in general. What is the science behind dreams? Why do we have them? I know they're like manifestations of anything we're anxious about, or it could be something completely random, like some fantasy dream.
Dreams are
What they about?
such
Like why?
an interesting topic for me personally as well, because there doesn't seem to be any substantially convincing evidence about why. We have a lot of theories about why we dream. Some theories, especially if you notice you have anxiety dreams, that you're worrying about something in real life and that sort of manifests in your brain, trying to figure out, why am I having this emotion? And it points you to a scene of, like, for example, the most common one, your teeth falling out, right? That's an anxiety dream that a lot of people have. So that's one of the theories behind it. Another theory is just our brain keeps firing even if we're asleep. So there are portions of our brain that are more active, which is why we call it REM, right? Rapid eye movement. Our eyes actually do move around, sort of seeing what we're seeing in our dreams when this happens. And that's because our brain is actively firing at the moment we come back up to the REM sleep cycle. So there are many theories and no conclusive evidence of why, but dreams itself are such an interesting thing that you can actually take what you get from your dreams and figure out, is there something in my life that I'm worried about? And that's why I'm having this. So despite not knowing the reason behind it, you can try to analyze it later and figure out, oh, hey, that was this thing I was worried about and I didn't realize I was worrying about it. So that showed up in my dream. So, I mean, I don't know if some of you, like me, sometimes sort of dismiss your stress and your worries. It pops up in dreams, right? It becomes sort of like the actual situation. Like I've had a dream or sort of a nightmare about a webinar that I was supposed to do the night before. And I was stressing about it because I was late to the webinar or the link wasn't working. And then I woke up, I was like, thank goodness. Thank goodness it wasn't real, right? So sometimes it just pops up, you know. And it's very interesting. Maybe if you guys want to, I know some people do this, they keep a dream journal where you actually write down your dreams so that you can begin to realize like, oh, hey, these dreams have a theme. I'm worrying about something and I didn't realize it before. So that's something that might help a little bit. But I don't have the answer as to exactly why. I just know there are many theories about it. And even the science behind it is a bit inconclusive right now.
And with the dream journal, I know it might be another pseudoscience, so I'm going to recommend it, but there's something called lucid dreaming, isn't it? Where you're able to control what you're actually going to be dreaming about if you understand, or if you recognize your sleeping pattern at what point you're going to be falling into deep sleep. It's kind of related to that movie Inception, but I'm like
But
getting off
lucid
topic.
dreaming is
To have to go
interesting
into
too.
that.
Yeah.
But there is.
But I wouldn't say you'd get enough rest with that.
But there's a question here. Yeah, probably. There's a question related from when people have nightmares. Sometimes they might wake up panicking or filled with anxiety. Do you have any like quick solutions for that?
I would say not really a quick solution, right? But maybe managing and working on your anxiety symptoms in general in daytime first could help you with that. If there are nightmares, there's a lot of support given, like therapy wise, when it comes to having night terrors or nightmares, because there might be something else in your life that is resulting in these sort of flashbacks or trauma and anxiety. So I recommend working on that generally first so that you're able to manage your anxiety in real life. And if you still have those nightmares, because usually it will reduce it, definitely. But if you still have those nightmares, then you can realize that once you wake up with that panic, you can use those same techniques to reduce the panic immediately. Well, not immediately, but gradually. And realize that, okay, it's just a dream, it's not something that's real, and it's just my anxiety manifesting here. So both doing it in the waking time generally to manage your anxiety, and these coping skills will help you when you do wake up with a nightmare and panicking.
And they can do
For
the
sure.
mindfulness
Yes.
breathing exercise we shared earlier as well, right? There's a question here. All the handouts are available in the handout tab. So just go to the tab and you can choose which handout you'd like to download. We are getting to 12:15. There's still a few more questions. Are you okay with
good if
staying
all
on,
of
Amanda?
you are good too, because I have some questions that came into my private
Yeah.
mentions as well. So I don't mind touching on those
Right.
later.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Let me just go through more questions.
I saw a question. What if you dream about romance? Why not, right?
Yeah. Not sure. Yeah. I don't know how I can help you with that. might be something they're anxious about as well, you know. Again, there's another question about affordable and good quality pillow mattresses. As Amanda mentioned before, it's different for everyone, so you have to try it out yourself to see if it works. I know a lot of mattress companies, they even do these try it for a few weeks first, and if it's not comfortable, you can get a full refund. So something to remember when you're buying your next mattress. This question about eating, just your diet before sleep. What is the recommended time to space out before you eat your last meal?
That's a good
and then getting to
question.
sleep?
I think this really does depend on your digestive system. Because some people have, our bodies naturally digest, if I'm not mistaken, was it 4 hours? Let me just do a quick Google search, everyone, because I don't want to give you any wrong information in this. Okay, sorry, I was wrong. So it takes about 6 to 8 hours for your food to pass through your stomach and your small intestine, and then it gets there for further digestion. So while it sounds like it's a pretty long time, it's okay to have maybe, I think, about that 4 hour period before you fall asleep. So if you want to go to sleep at 11, maybe eating at 7 or 6:30 is better. If you fall asleep at 12, maybe about 8 p.m. latest meal, right? Which is why I think a lot of people do have dinner earlier these days. Not just because I think of culture. I think a lot of culture do have earlier dinners, and then they might have like something small like a snack later. But recommended 6 to 8 p.m. latest dinner time, especially if it's a heavy meal.
Right, and then related to this, because coming up this month, we have the holy month of Ramadan, where Muslims around the world will be fasting, and I'm sure they have to change their sleeping patterns to wake up for sahur, which is the time they can eat before the fasting period starts of the day. Do you have any tips and recommendations to keep a healthy sleep pattern, but incorporating
Now,
this
this
as
is
well?
tricky because I have some friends who've told me that they like to have a steady, sort of stable sleep routine. And when they wake up for sahur, they don't fall back asleep. But there's some people who can't do that because they work late. And then when they wake up for sahur, they have to fall back asleep, and go back to bed. So this is a very tricky thing. It depends if you have the ability to sleep much earlier and then wake up for sahur and don't fall back asleep the entire day. But I also know that a lot of people do naps during the Puasa month, during the Ramadan period. So you can definitely do naps. Like I mentioned earlier, you can definitely have midday naps if you want to. Because I don't recommend after sahur, when you're able to eat in the morning, I don't recommend you go back to sleep immediately. It would be great if you have a midday nap a bit later, a few hours later, and then sort of get your energy back, continue with the rest of the day, and then figure out your nighttime routine, right? If you're able to. If you're not, maybe figuring out a routine that works for you, because it is just 1 month. And maybe what you can do is figure out what works best, even though it's not the most ideal sleep routine. But just bear in mind that after this 1 month, you can go back to your regular sleep routine and all the other sleep hygiene tips. If you don't struggle too badly with sleep, of course. Yeah, hopefully that helps. I think it really depends on each person. You can definitely do the early sleep, early wake, or late sleep, naps, and so on.
Because you have to experiment and
Exactly.
just see what works best for you as well. Okay, coming near the end, so there's another question about other ways to get to sleep, such as EMDR and hypnosis. What's the science
So
behind that?
EMDR is, I believe it's eye movement desensitization, perhaps. It's a therapy technique, actually, which is used mostly for trauma processing. eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's used for trauma processing. So EMDR, maybe if your sleep issues are related to trauma or sort of traumatic stress, then that might be a good option to look at. Hypnosis is also, there is research behind it that it might help, but these two techniques are usually used to uncover deeper rooted issues that might present itself as sleep difficulties. So if you notice that, hey, there is something that I've not worked on, it's trauma from the past, it's experiences that are unresolved, then I do recommend go for therapy, go for EMDR therapy or hypnosis therapy if you'd like, or even just regular talk therapy, right? To explore and resolve these issues so that this doesn't represent itself as sleep difficulty in the future. Sometimes when you're able to recognize what is the main factor that's holding me back from sort of healthier mental well-being and emotions, you should work on that first. So yeah, EMDR and hypnosis might work, but not the way you might think. It'll work in the long-term sort of therapy and resolving and processing past issues.
So it's something you have to consistently do. You won't just like get someone with a watch
No,
and
that's the
trick
thing,
you to
right?
go
I
into
think
sleep
people think
like
hypnosis is like
immediately.
that, but hypnosis is different than hypnotherapy. I think that was what I was referring to, like clinical hypnotherapy. You use the same hypnosis techniques, not with the watch, not with the watch all the time. There are other methods. But basically, these are like, you're right, it's long term. It's sort of, you got to go for a few sessions to really uncover and benefit from these interventions.
Great. Okay, I think we'll do the last two questions. It's one about deep sleep. So what's the science behind deep sleep? Like how long is the REM period of deep sleep? And more specifically, is 1 or 2 hours enough? It's a good idea to track how you're sleeping on your smartwatch, but what do you do
That's a
with
good
this information?
question. I think, again, I don't want to give wrong information, but deep sleep is part of the sleep cycle, right? And this part is sort of if I'm not mistaken, it would be the third stage. Yeah, the third to the fourth stage of your sleep. So we have 4 stages of sleep and the REM sleep, right? So REM is the one where rapid eye movement, you're most awake. Stage 1, slightly more awake. Stage 2, deeper into sleep. Stage 3 is when your deep sleep actually happens, right? And these ones are sort of like I mentioned, it's sort of a loop where it goes from stage 1, 2, 3, 4, back up 3, 2, 1 REM, back down 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1 REM, and so on. So your deep sleep time is counted as how much time you spend in that deeper sleep here. And how it's usually measured on your smartwatch is your heart rate, which does slow down, your movement, which, if I believe this correctly, it completely stops when you're just breathing at that point. And it measures how much that happens. So once you start tossing and turning, getting a bit restless in your sleep, then it means you're at stage 2, stage 1, or REM cycle. So if you notice that you're not getting enough of this, and like I said, if you have 8 hours and you have 1.5 hours of the cycle all the time, like down and up, you might be getting about maybe 2 or 3 hours of deep sleep, and that's sort of the ideal. But if you notice that you're getting like less than 1 hour despite sleeping for 8 hours, and you notice you come awake again very often, then that's an issue. So with deep sleep, trying out these sleep hygiene techniques definitely can help you induce it and stay in deep sleep much longer. But again, there's a lot of science behind this that is inconclusive, where sleep itself has been researched so much, but we don't have the exact tools or methods that say this is what you can do to have deep sleep all the time. But I do suggest give these sleep hygiene tips a try, and hopefully that helps.
Thank you. And last question, we'll finish off on a light one. Do you have any recommendations for sleep podcasts?
Well,
I know you mentioned it earlier. I
yeah.
sometimes listen to ASMR, rain noises, trick my brain
Like,
to think it's raining outside. And then when I'm listening to the rain, I'm not thinking
mm,
about anything else. But how about you? Like, do you have any
okay.
recommendations
So
for
just
our
a
audience?
disclaimer, when I say I listen to podcasts when I sleep, it's not sleep-inducing podcasts. It's just podcasts. So I listen
Oh,
to
okay. Right.
this might be a very niche area. I listen to a live, like actual play of a Dungeons and Dragons game that they've recorded, but I put a sleep timer on it. So I don't know what it is about certain podcasts and the voices on it. Even though it's very active energy happening, it's so easy for me to fall asleep because my brain is just like not really listening and not really paying attention, but it's noise. It's sort of, I treat it as white noise. But ASMR definitely helps. I think if you have rain noise on the rain noise, or I think like ocean waves as well, that definitely helps. Um, and other sort of white noise just in the background, that also helps. So you can, I think there are some podcasts that are called like the sleep podcast, or and those have like, I think there's one called ASMR sleep as well, where they have just tons of episodes that you can just listen to and help yourself fall asleep. But if you're like me and you do require a bit more entertainment, maybe you can listen to another type of podcast that doesn't really stimulate you too much, but it stimulates you just enough that you're not feeling too bored and thinking about other things. So again, experiment, try out what actually helps you there, to fall asleep.
Yeah, I agree. I can't listen to like the more
Yeah.
active ones because then I just get too engaged. Um, I've even had to try listen to this podcast called
Uh-huh.
Really Boring Stories. And when you actually listen to it, they're just talking absolute nonsense. The stories don't make any sense, but
Mm.
it's a guy with a low voice and he's really calming and he speaks like this. And the stories are really boring that you just don't even listen, just fall asleep. Um,
Yeah.
that's one of my recommendations. Right? So it looks like we've covered all the questions that we can in our time. Amanda, is there anything else you wanted to cover just before
Yes.
we wrap up?
I'm looking at the private ones, but I'm seeing what I could cover right now. I think you did cover a lot of the private questions already. Uh, oh, there's one here, gap between sleep and exercise. Yes, there is. Uh, I believe there's some research on this where you shouldn't exercise too late either, because your body is still having that sort of active energy levels from the hormones that get produced during your exercise. So best bet is to exercise at least 1 hour, or finish your exercise at least 1 hour before you fall asleep, or 1.5 hours or something like that. Uh, yeah, I believe that's it. I guess just as a last disclaimer, again, something I have repeated throughout the webinar, sleep hygiene, it's different for everyone, and it can be really hard to start on really changing all of these things. So just focus on one thing, whatever one thing you felt from today's webinar that it's the easiest for me to go into, it's the easiest for me to change right now. Just start with that, right? And then work your way up once you're comfortable with this first change. Don't hold yourself to um, highly about changing everything, and don't beat yourself up for not being able to do that either. We talked about motivation earlier, it's very normal. But yeah, all the best with figuring out your sleep, and hopefully all of you get better sleep in the future.
Agreed. Thank you, everyone, again, for joining and all the questions you asked today. Apologies if we did miss some. We tried to cover them all, but if we did miss it, just a reminder, you can reach out to your coaches on the Naluri app, or if you want to talk to Amanda, you can even email her yourself. Before we sign off, just a reminder for everyone to give us feedback on the presentation and the webinar. Feel free to fill up the survey from that pop-up you see on your left. And if you're interested in future webinars, do check our community website. In 2 weeks, we have one about diet and nutrition. And please share it with your family and friends. This webinar is open to the public, so we'd like to have as many people as we can joining. And thank you for joining, and we'll see you in the next webinar. If you just stay on, you'll be redirected to the feedback
Thanks,
form as well.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.